G'day and welcome to the Hunters Campfire podcast. My name's Mark and along with good mate Ian, we're here to help with all things hunting. If you're looking to start but don't know where to begin, you want to make the most of your next trip away or even plan that hunt of a lifetime, we've got something for you. You'll find our podcasts on Apple, Google, Spotify, Amazon and plenty of others. And if you want more, head over to our YouTube channel, The Hunters Campfire, where we have plenty of how-to and hunting videos along with the full video production of every podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and good hunting. So, good evening, Dylan. Dylan Smith from Wilder Life. Glad to have you on board, and we are going to bash your ears tonight about trad bow shooting and everything to do with hunting with a bow, just so you know. So if you just warm yourself up. And of course, we've got Ian with us again. Thank you very much, Ian, for making yourself available and being our tech guy. And with that kind of funny intro, first thing I'm going to do before we jump in is, I don't know how many episodes ago, but we spoke about a trade flintlock pistol. You may remember that, Ian. You may not. Okay. So that article about that flintlock pistol was published today.
Oh, there you go.
In Australian and New Zealand Handgun, which is really interesting because I write for Australian and New Zealand Handgun, and the only thing I write about Australia and New Zealand Handgun is flintlock pistols. So, like, I'm only like 200 years behind everyone else in that magazine, but anyway.
Oh, well, it got published. You'll be
That's
stoked.
it. So, yeah, they publish a couple. It's an annual. It only comes, it's a once a year, and I usually get a couple of antique stories in there. So, yes, very happy to see that. And that was one of the flintlocks we spoke about some time ago.
Well, if you want to go back in time a little bit more and talk about something even older than the flintlock pistol, maybe you could get some tips off Dylan about his trad bow hunting tonight, because that's even older.
I was going to say that. Yeah. Segue waiting to go right there.
There we go. Well, that killed that idea, didn't it?
Before we jump into that, though, I did want to just a little bit of the around the grounds candid chat. Black Friday sales. What did you go for?
Oh, okay. Go for it, Dylan.
What'd you go for? Did you jump on those sales? Are you into that?
Yeah, I bought a new set of arrows from an Aussie company called ARWD. So I'm looking to I just have some high quality arrows for a change, and that was a really good discount. So that's all I've bought so far.
Yeah.
I think most of the sales are over now.
Yeah, it could be all over for now. Christmas will come shortly, but I'll pick your brains about those arrows shortly, because I'm a budding trad bow hunter. Well, sorry, I can't call myself a trad bow hunter yet. I'm a bow hunter sometimes when I'm brave enough to put the rifle down and take the bow instead.
Yeah.
But I've picked up a trad bow, which I love. It's so much fun. We'll get into that a little bit more. Mark, did you hit the sales?
Yeah, look, I bought a new Olight torch. I can't remember the model of it. It's the new, lightest, biggest one. You can see it from the moon, that kind of thing. Bought it on the Cyber Monday sales for 40% off.
Unreal. They're a good light.
I believed it was 40% off. I went for it. I believed it. So I bought it. Yeah, that's what I got. And I don't think I got anything on Black Friday. No. Except for, no, I did. I bought some Lego, but hey, that's nice for other people. So yeah, so that.
Well, I bought a bit of lightweight hunting gear for our upcoming Pilliga trip, and I accidentally bought myself hot pink camouflage because I'm colorblind and I couldn't tell that on the picture. And
okay.
Anyway, so I'll be rocking the Pilliga and hot pink, and I can do that, and I will do that. So
you won't get
a refund.
Nice.
We won't lose you. We'll find you.
No, you'll find me. Anyway, onwards. That's all right. I just wanted to see if people were taking advantage of it, because it seems that Black Friday this year was huge online, the stuff that was going on. We've really adopted it in Australia, and if I can get a discount on my hunting gear, I'm keen.
Well, did you hear about Green Friday, which is kind of like the semi-backlash to it? It's like, don't buy stuff. It's bad for the planet.
No, I didn't hear that.
No. Well, strange enough, I did come across it. And the other thing is too, as Black Friday goes, there's a company in the UK called Red Kettle, which make hunting clothes. And their summer gear is probably pretty good for us for winter. And I got speaking to the guy
Yeah,
who
right.
runs it. He runs it by his name of Christian, and he's actually Danish. He was living in England. He's moving back to Denmark. I've been chatting to him, so we might try and get him on the program to talk about hunting in Denmark. So, but I'll check their gear out. Okay, enough of the gratuitous product placement. Let's move on and let's talk to Dylan about, mate, why don't you give us a rundown of how you got to where you are right now with your hunting? What's the story behind it?
I guess you could say I'm just like a lot of other kids who grew up in the bush, really. Grew up in a small village outside Inverell, New South Wales. I didn't really spend much time hunting as a kid. I tried to a little bit and, with homemade bows and arrows and stuff, but my family was predominantly into fishing, Murray cod fishing. So we spent a lot of time at Copeland Dam and time in the rivers and stuff around Inverell. And yeah, it's just one of those things, I guess, where if you're surrounded by that stuff, then you just kind of get into it. It's just the way it happens. So learned how to shoot rifles in the backyard, even moved to the coast sort of for most of my teenage years, but went out pig chasing with some friends and their dogs sort of around that time, and spent some time in outback New South Wales with my dad just on photographic holidays because we're just into the bush and that kind of thing. And it was around that time that my brothers and I realised that we were allowed to hunt in state forests because we never had, private access at the time. So we just started to ask people how to get our gun licenses and that sort of thing. And got right into it. At the time, I was getting heavily into my hunting. My biggest passion in life was probably playing guitar, playing music. Still is, but it sort of all came together when I'd finished my degree and I was looking at moving to a rural area because that's where all the good hunting opportunities are. So that's when the band took a bit of a back seat and started my job as a school teacher, which I'm still doing at the moment. And just found myself living in a rural area again after growing up in a rural area. So the opportunities were all over the place. So I've just grabbed the bull by the horns and run with it, I guess.
What year of children do you teach?
I'm a secondary trained teacher, so my specialisation is in ancient history and society and culture. So in terms of my teaching areas, I teach kids from year 7 to year 12, but at the school I'm at the moment, I'm the head of wellbeing. So my responsibilities go from kindergarteners up to year 12s.
Where were they metal band playing, bow hunting, trad teachers in my day? Seriously, that's unreal. Good on you.
Cheers, buddy. Yeah, no, I just it's just a lot of it's just part of who I am. Like I'm interested in the stuff that I'm interested in, obviously, and I don't apologise to anybody for being a bit of a weirdo in that regard. And certainly playing the guitar was a lot more when I was living on the coast. I did my high school years on the coast, so that's just where my passions went. And like I said, they still are. I'm heavily into my music. So yeah, I still play a lot of guitar, and I do a bit at school with the guitar kind of thing, but all the music I play for myself is pretty well for myself, or I record songs over the internet with my friends, and we sort of team up on a few things in that regard. But I probably spend more time hunting and outdoors than I do playing guitar these days, which I'm okay with. It's fine.
For sure.
Now, I think, if I remember correctly, you and I once spoke about a rifle about a 9.3 by 62. Is that correct? Did you buy a 9.3 by 62?
Yeah.
I think
you and
we
I
did
had a
once.
few chats over Facebook.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so about that.
Or maybe in a chat on some comments page on a Facebook page about the game cancel or something. Maybe I might have come across you, because I think there was a point when you and I had some articles coming out in the SSAA mag at similar kind of time or something.
Yeah, maybe. That's right. Because I'm just trying to think. That's right. I just thought of that before. You know, I thought, hang on, we spoke about that 9.3. The reason that mentioned that is because a couple of weeks ago we spoke to Brian Boyle, which kind of got Northern Territory buffalo on my mind, and I jumped from that to that to that. So yeah. So with your bow hunting, I mean, did you started with the rifle?
Yeah, mate. I didn't have any experience with bows besides just homemade stuff. And then I suppose, I don't know, a few years ago now, maybe even 6 or 7 years ago, I wasn't particularly healthy, and I was never really unhealthy, but I couldn't really hunt the way I wanted to hunt because I wasn't as fit as I wanted to be. So I just started to research a bit about fitness and hiking, and I just sort of stumbled into a bunch of content on the internet about bow hunting and fitness, and people like Cameron Haynes, and about how bow hunting had become really cool. So I grabbed a compound around that time when I was starting to take my fitness a lot more seriously, and then spent a few years mucking around with that and hunting, and I sort of had an accident and dry fired it and blew it up. So that kind of, it ruined it. Like I had a mate give me another one afterwards, but I think once I picked up the trad bow, I found that's really where my interest was in the bow hunting thing. So I've been running with that for probably about 2.5 years now, I suppose, but still hunt with a rifle to feed myself predominantly, and also to fulfill any obligations I have to landowners who are counting on me to try and reduce as many animals on their property as I can, because if it was up to me with just my bow, then I wouldn't be doing a very good job.
Yeah, let's get real for a second. Yeah. Hey, tell us about that. Tell us about the accident with the compound bow. Was it just that the thing blew up, or did you damage yourself with that?
No, it's just, the bottom line is it was just careless. I was teaching a class at work. I had this elective class that I've run a few years in a row now called Bush Survival Skills. We make room in the curriculum to teach some subjects that are just purely for engagement. And I think I've got kids in there from year 5, 6, 7, and 8. So it kind of spans across a decent age group. And I take gear in there all the time just to show them how it works. And a lot of them are hunters, or they're, parents or carers are hunters or fishermen. So it's a pretty easy way to go about things. And I took a compound bow into class and a Rico bow into class. I showed them the similarities and the differences, and I drew the compound bow back and said, of course, you should never really do this, because if you accidentally let it go, you'll dry fire it. And then when I was letting it down, it slipped out of my fingers and it exploded.
Oh.
So,
I was going to wonder.
Yeah. Child. There you go.
I've had a couple of minor accidents with the compound bow, and I haven't damaged myself, but de-loop, slit and go, and just smash yourself in the face, or a couple of those sorts of things. And that was half the reason that I decided I wanted to do more with the trad bow, because it just doesn't have as much complexity to it. And I'm always see the odd gruesome photo of someone's the shaft is cracked internally. They don't know it, and it destroys itself as you release it, and goes through people's hands. And they're a seriously powerful piece of gear to be able to pick up off the shelf and do what you want to do with. Yeah. I was wondering whether you developed a bit of a fear of the compound bow with the accident or not, like I had. Well, not fear is the wrong word, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, well, for me, it was like I was happy to look for some new limbs. It was my stuff up, so I wasn't trying to blame anybody. I was just like, all right, I guess I'll try and find some new limbs. And I spoke to a few shops. No one could really help me, and you need a bow press to work on them, and it just seemed complicated. I just didn't like the idea that I might be having to try and find parts in the States and that. So, and then even then, a friend of mine gave me a compound bow to sort of use afterwards. And he adjusted the draw length for me, but then I had to still send the bow to somebody to get the timing changed. And it just seemed like something I know they work and they're fantastic, and I've got friends who kill heaps of stuff with compound bows. They're wonderful hunters. It's just not something that interests me as much as the trad bow does.
Yeah, look, I shot compound bow a long time ago, and then I put it down. Actually, it was up not long after 96, and so I kind of went that way, and then I moved away from everything for a while, and then so when I came, I suppose, back to the bow, I came back to a trad bow, a recurve. So for you, did you go to recurve or did you go straight to longbow? What was the steps in that?
No, mate, I've told the story a couple of times in various places, but I just had a bloke I know of the internet. I would call him a friend, really nice fella. We both had the same profession, so got a bit in common in that way. And get out of some of his equipment, he had a lot of bows, and he just said, "Look, I've got one here. I'll give it to you if you'll give it a good home." So I said, "Oh yeah, no worries." So he told me what it was, and I'm like, "Oh yeah, Black Widow," and had a bit of a Google and realised he was giving me something pretty special. So I'm sort of forever in debt to that fella. He knows how much I appreciate it. So I just got that because that's what I happened to end up with. I didn't really make a decision either way. And then I got it out of the case when he posted it to me, and I couldn't draw it back at all. It's just way too heavy for me. So I ended up sourcing a used pair of limbs from America that I really developed my technique with, and now sort of go between the two sets. I go in the ABA comps with the lighter sets at the moment, and I've hunted a little bit with the heavier ones. But yeah, I didn't. The heavier limbs that he sent me were 65 at 28, so I think I pull about 27 inches, so I estimate about 62 pounds with those ones. And the new ones, I know that it's not really, really heavy like a war bow or something, but in terms of most people who are just hunting like what we are, not many people use over 60 these days. So, and then the used ones I bought from America, they pull 54 at 28, so I estimate I pull somewhere around 50 or 51 pounds with those, so they're much more comfortable.
You call that light? That's really interesting. Yeah.
Well, they're
the lighter ones. Like I did buy a couple of other lighter bows, and I've since sold them to make some space for another bow that I've got coming and whatever. But 50, like during an ABA comp for an entire weekend, I'm still maybe getting a little bit of fatigue by the end of the weekend, but it's as much my lack of experience as it is my conditioning in general. Because I'm still, I've only been shooting the trad bow for about 2.5 or close to 3 years, I guess. So there's plenty of stuff I'm working through as well, which I'm sure we'll talk about here with the struggles that come with doing that kind of thing.
Yes, we will.
So I've noticed that you're shooting a longbow as a lot, as well as is it a Norseman or a chieftain or something like that? I've been following you a little bit.
The brand is Norseman. It's made by a bloke who lives on the Central Coast. His name's Nick Linton, and the model is the chieftain model. So I guess his brand has a bit of a Viking theme. So he's got models called the Berserker and the Valkyrie and whatever. And the chieftain is it's just named for his model that is completely straight laid. So it's sitting right here, but it's there's no curve or angle in the limbs whatsoever. It's just a completely straight line. And you can get lots of different kinds of longbows just like you can with recurves. And my thinking was, if I'm going to get a longbow, I'll get a proper longbow. So it's dead straight, but it does have a locator grip on it. Some people don't think that's quite as longbow as it should be. They like a straight grip, but coming from the recurve, I like to locate a grip on it. But it's a nice bit of gear, definitely.
That's a funny thing that I've found, and I mean, I'm only really just exploring this as well, is that there's, even within the trad bow, there's so many variants of what a trad bow is, and you can get you can get a recurve that is very, very complex is the right word, but it's certainly optioned up sights, in interchangeable limbs, the whole lot like that, and then you can go to something completely different, which is, shooting off the shelf, and then you get into the longbows where you might not even have a shelf really, or just a grip. Certainly, I'm interested. That's my interest. Is the next. I'm currently shooting a recurve, but I would like to try a longbow at some time. And if I was going to try a longbow, I'm kind of like you. I want a longbow to look like I want it to be a longbow, and I'd prefer the straight grip style longbow, like a Bear Montana or something like that.
Yeah, and that's the thing, mate. Like, that people on the internet talk about something called the trad police, and how there are these spooky people out there who say, you can't shoot plastic veins, it has to be feathers, and you can't shoot off an elevated rest, it has to be off the shelf. And I kind of get where they're all coming from, but for the most part, certainly the way I am and the way I use it, because it's not I spend more time carrying my bows than I do carrying my rifles, but I certainly kill a lot more animals with my rifles as opposed to my bow. So it's not really the primary way I hunt. So for me, it's just got to be fun. And, I spent countless hours watching Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves as a kid, and, even Dances with Wolves. So they're two of my favourite movies. So just having a bow and shooting arrows is fun for me. So longbows are more difficult to shoot than recurves in general. Like, they're obviously exceptions, but it puts a smile on my face. Except when I miss big balls from really close.
Well, you're giving yourself the ultimate challenge, mate. Just getting up close enough to shoot big balls with a longbow, I think, is a pretty good thing.
Oh yeah, and I forget. I was listening to one of these podcasts a couple of hours ago, and maybe it was you, Ian, said that pigs were made for bow hunting, or pigs and bow hunting go together, and it is good, and that's right, but I mean, I'm perfectly happy to screw stalks up and that sort of thing for the sake of carrying the bow, because around when I was getting into it, it was when the drought was at its peak here in New South Wales, and there were just so many animals on the properties where I hunt, and the farmers were just like, you really need to be doing something about these numbers. So I was doing the best job I could with my rifles and shot a heap of critters, and I did enjoy it the whole time, but certainly started to wear me out a little bit. I was trying to butcher all the deer that I was shooting. I didn't really want to waste any of them if I could help it. So I just had this opportunity in front of me of all these animals, and it just made me think, man, I really should just grab one of these bows and see what I can make happen. And right when I started getting to the point where I felt confident taking a bow out for a hunt with me, then all the rains came and everything's been a lot more spread out. So the hunting for me has been pretty difficult in terms of not seeing as many animals as what I'm used to, but it's still been really good fun. And even just shooting my bow in the yard, I'm enjoying that a lot more. I don't really shoot my rifles unless I have to anymore. So it's a lot easier to go out the front veranda and just let a few arrows go every evening. So it's been good fun, and it's something I'm just really looking forward to spending a long time doing, as long as I can.
That's certainly it for me. I think COVID kind of got me back into bowing. I was kind of missing doing anything with the rifle, and I thought, well, don't have to let a couple of rounds off down the street, but I reckon I could get a bow set up. So I set up I literally set up a range at home here, and then went and bought a bow and said, okay, let's see what happens with this, which probably wasn't the smartest thing to do, but anyway, that's how I did it. And and I also bought one for the girl as well, so we had two of them just to start with, and I just bought a 40-pound recurve, a pretty cheap one, but it's a lovely little bow, 58 inch, so a little hunting bow, and I just started slamming away with that and was spraying them everywhere. But I was having fun, and I spent a little bit more time on when I got my wife, got her a nice 20-pound basically a target bow that's really, really nice to shoot. And actually, my youngest is shooting, and my oldest is shooting it now. It's way too long for him, but he loves shooting it. So, and then I thought, oh well, I'm starting to get an idea of what it is, and so I jumped to a Bear Super Kodiak, which is a lovely bow to shoot, and that's at 45 pound. And I shoot that every day because I literally can. I got a 14 meter range here at home, and I can shoot that. And every day, or not every day, but often the kid will go past on a skateboard or bike, and he'll stop and he'll see me, and he goes, "That's so cool," or something like that. Something like that. And we've had friends over, and we've kind of had like this little bow shooting session with friends. That's the one. That's what I find most enjoyable about it. Unfortunately, I don't live in a situation where I can do that every day with my rifles or a shotgun, but I can do it every day with a bow. And certainly, and it's. I think it's also great for the boys too. The fact that you've got to concentrate with such intent is actually, I think, really good for kids. When I say to my son when he picks it up, I say we want to get quiet mind, because he's like every other 8-year-old. He's got 3,000 things. Well, he's got which new Pokemon card he wants to trade, and what new cartoon he's seen, and what his mates got at school, and all that stuff. So it's actually good to just quiet mind and just get him to practice, and he's starting to fling them okay. So, and I think he might be a bowman. He might have it. He might have it in him. But
you can have worse things, a son, to get into than bow hunting. That's for sure.
Yeah, look,
yeah.
Look, and they're going to be big boys too. They're both of them, So I'm looking forward to the day that I don't have to carry anything. I can tell you that right now. They're going to be big strapping lads, and I'm going to go, well, there it is. You can carry it out. Now I'll just sit there and watch. But and I've said to him, well, mate, I'll back you up with a rifle, so don't worry, nothing will get you. But that's the kind of that's the kind of the way we're moving, and I take my eldest away hunting once a year to a really good property in New South Wales that we go to. So we're building our way towards it, and the other thing is too, again, it's just so much more convenient, I think, is the best way to describe it.
Yeah.
It's just like that and practicing throwing lures. You can take the hooks off and you can just practice them in the backyard type thing.
Well, I've got a 3-year-old, just turned 4-year-old, I should say, who's he's got a little bow that he likes to plink arrows at Dad's target as often as he can, and I encourage that more for the dexterity of being able to actually pick up an arrow and knock it and balance that on a little bow and do that. But I picked up my first trad bow through this whole COVID process as well. I've had the compound for a while, and I've had some success with that, which has been great. But we're lucky enough to be on acres, so outside my office just here is and it's my office that's well away from the house, and I've got a 16-meter veranda across the back of it, which has a target at one end and a 16-meter mark at the other, and I can keep going back to about 40 meters if I want to. But the pride and joy on the property for practicing the bow is the 60-meter or 70-meter, I think it is, dressage arena that my wife trains horses on. So I've got this perfect flat piece of ground. It's all sand. You can put all your markers in it, and it's got a nice big embankment at the back to put targets up on. So for our club, we're organising, a day for people to come and, we have a semi-professional comes in that knows a lot about bows and bow tuning and setup and all of those sorts of things, and you can go through the one-on-one setup with every single one of them to get the arrow flight right and the weight right and the front of center right and the right, whether it be vanes or a 3 or a 4 combination or feathers. And it was a really interesting process to go through with him when I was setting up, because I just figured, you just go pick up the bow and I'll just use my compound arrows and they should be right. And I can fire them and they hit a target, that's okay. But when he talks about how to set it up, it was a fascinating one-on-one session for 2 or 3 hours, and I walked away with a completely different setup than I thought I was going to have. different arrows,
Yeah.
different weights up front, 4 goose feathers on the back, not 3, not plastic vanes, and there was no way in the world that I was going full trad. The trad police are going to be all over me, dishing out tickets like you wouldn't believe. Because I thought I would have 3 plastic vanes on the back of those things so that I could intermix them with my compound bow. And why would you want feathers that you can't really hunt with in the wet? And things like that. And he convinced me otherwise, and we went through it. And one of the things that I didn't even know with bow tuning, I gave him one of the arrows that I planned on using, and we talked through the weights of what we were going to do up the front, and we started practicing without vanes. I thought, how's this going to work? But enough weight up front, and that works. And this is just all of the experience that he had to help me tune it. And I went away so confident with this brand new bow. It was unreal. So, yeah, we're going to encourage that process with our club, and people will come down and, whether they camp or whatever, but they'll have this big 70-meter range to play on and introduce new people to. So, yeah, it's an important part of the process, I think.
Yeah, look,
I think so, mate. Are you right, bud? No.
I was going to say that's something that I've noticed from watching your videos is about that tuning process, and I think that's well worth talking about. I mean, because one reason I don't understand it, so I'm keen to learn.
Yeah, well, certainly was going to ask how you set up your gear and specifically for new people getting into it, some advice, I guess, on what not to do. Like we're all in this now generation, and we've been sitting there buying stuff online. If I'm going to go and pick up a bow without asking too many questions, what am I going to get wrong, and what should I do about that? It'd be good to get some advice.
Yeah, well, I know I emailed, in the thing before this chat, I just was so terrified about people thinking I was trying to come across as some kind of expert, because I'm just not. But I've learned a few things over the last couple of years, and I'm certainly doing my best to talk to anybody else who's new in that. I've kind of grabbed all this knowledge from a bunch of people over here who are really good at it, and if I can, I'll try and help other people who are just coming into it. But there's still plenty of trial and error with it. But look, one of the things with the compound, the first compound I bought it off a bloke who just happened to be about the same size as I am. So I just bought it off him, and the arrows just worked, and the sight worked for me. So I talked to people and had my arrow set up. Oh, how much weight up front? Well, I don't know. I knew how heavy the broadhead was. They're asking me what inserts I'm using. I'm just like, I don't know, the ones that come in the arrows. Like, I don't know why you're asking me these questions, because they don't matter. Yeah, and then so I was just lucky that I happened to find myself with this bow that I could shoot okay, and I killed a few animals with it, and the arrows flew okay. And then when I got into the trad bow thing, that the whole idea behind it for me was I need everything to be much more simple. And after I really got into the tuning the arrow thing, I wouldn't say it's a complicated process, but when you look at the compound, the compound bow is a complicated piece of gear. But if you get a shop to basically get you to shoot it and then set the bow up the way you need it to be set up, then you can get the arrow, you can tune the bow to the arrow a lot more. Whereas with a trad bow, you can't really do that. So you basically have to do whatever you can to the arrow to make it shoot well for you. So once I understood that, I had a phone call with a mate of mine, and he basically walked me through this process. He's like, look, man, the arrows you're shooting are just far too light for someone who wants to hunt pigs and deer and goats. So just, buy these arrows off this website, whatever they were, just cheapy Eastern Power Flights, and then buy 100-grain brass inserts, and then, just get one of these bare shafts and glue the insert in, and then put your point on there and just keep shooting it, and it'll come out. Oh, okay, I've got to get it right now. If it comes out with the knock to the left, it's a weak shaft, and if it comes out with a knock to the right, it's a stiff shaft. So essentially, people with a really long draw length don't have this advantage, because I can basically just whack almost whatever weight on the front of an arrow that I want to, and just keep cutting it until it gets right back to the shelf, until it stiffens. Whereas So my arrows for my Black Widow with the light limbs, they're about 27.5 inches long. My arrows for my longbow are 27 inches long, and with that bow, because it's a slightly different grip, I only pull about 26.5 inches with it. So I've got that advantage. Some friends of mine have 30-inch long draw lengths, so they've only got a couple of inches worth of play in terms of cutting, and they've got to muck around with their point weight a lot more. But the other trap that I fell into a little bit was I was just trusting that my release was clean enough to make the arrow behave consistently, and it wasn't. So I was doing things with my release that were making it come out knock left or knock right or whatever, and I didn't realise it was a problem of mine as opposed to a problem of the arrow. So you can go down a little bit of a rabbit hole in that space. But I would say certainly as early as you're able to and as early as you feel confident in doing so, you should start to just cut some of your arrows and put some weight on the front just to muck around with it, because when you get to the point where some of your bear shafts are coming out pretty well straight, and then you put some feathers or fletchers in the back of them and you get your wife or whoever to stand behind you with your phone and get some slow motion videos and they just coming out like darts, then you can just shoot with so much more confidence. It's exactly the same as just picking up some random rifle off the shelf and some random ammo, and you kind of feel like you know what it's doing, but not really. And then you get into hand loading, and all of a sudden you see what you're really capable of in terms of your accuracy, and then you can shoot with confidence. So yeah, confidence is it is in most things. It's a massive player in the trad bow scene in that regard with your arrow flight and all that jazz.
Yeah, well, certainly. Just changing the weights up front and, slightly stiffening the shaft up by taking bits and pieces off the front or off the back. I just couldn't believe how much difference it made. And to have someone that knew that, because I didn't know that. I had no idea about that. But to actually go and talk to someone that knew about that and then spend a couple of hours with them, and in his opinion, when I left, we had the best arrow combination for me, which I didn't even know was a thing.
Yep.
And you're talking about various different shafts that you've purchased, and I think the ones that you said were just cheapies. They're my favourites, but they just happen to be the ones that I had at the time, I think. But he told me what to go and
they're
get.
readily available, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. They're easy to find, and for someone who's beginning, with a bow, who's just going to be smacking them and trying to get used to just the weight of the draw and those sorts of things, it's a good start. If you're going to then get into the 1%ers, you're getting into the better shafts and various different things. But it really opened my eyes by talking to someone who knew what they were doing. And you're right, it gives you all that confidence.
Oh, yeah.
And now I see that arrow fly, and I can read it. I know what it's doing and why it's doing it, and that's really important.
Yeah, and if it comes out a bit awkward, it's probably something you've done, especially with the longbow, because any inconsistency with finger pressure and all those things, you'll just see the shaft just kick way out, even with the feathers on there. Obviously, it'll correct after a little bit, but when I first started shooting, I just had them all coming out in all sorts of awkward directions, and I just thought that's the way it was, And the other thing as well is there's so much information out there on the internet with this kind of thing, and there's plenty from the old generation, with the greatest of respect to them, because there are plenty of people who've done some amazing things before I got into it, obviously, but a lot of the information that they have put out there on various forums or whatever about tuning arrows is just along the lines of, put enough feathers on the back and it'll straighten up kind of thing. And I don't mean to say nobody knew what they were doing, but certainly the information about tuning arrows, there's some stuff that's, way down here about lots more feathers and just grip it and rip it, and there's stuff that's all the way on this side, which is changing things, the 0.5%ers, and as with a lot of things in life, I tend to find myself pretty well in the middle somewhere. I get to a point where I feel pretty confident that I'm achieving what I need to achieve, and I just go with that. And maybe in a few years I'll get good enough to notice a couple of things wrong with this particular shaft or whatever it is, and I'll go with something higher quality. But it's with the trad stuff, it's so difficult to shoot. It's difficult to shoot within or up to the potential of the gear, I guess you could say. Like, you could have the the best or the worst arrows in the world, and still at about 30 meters, I'd have a hard time telling the difference with them, and a lot of people would be like that. So, I try not to get too caught up in it, but at the same time, certainly with the weight of them, because the heavier they are, the nicer your bow is to shoot. But obviously, you go too heavy, and then it's like throwing a shot put at someone. So there's a bit of a happy medium to find there as well.
Yeah, okay. And then you're obviously hunting with them. So what is your theory on broadheads and the right type of broadheads and mechanical broadheads versus the more traditional styles, 3 blades versus what, sharp versus jagged? Like, there's so many different schools of thought out there. There was actually a fantastic Meat Eater podcast recently that talked about there was a bloke. Did you listen to that one? It was fascinating. It was all about the mechanics of the arrow, essentially, wasn't it?
Yes. Yeah, mate. Look, I've got stuff that I like, but I'm not going to pretend that I know it's better over something else, because I've only ever killed stuff with 2-blade single bevel heads that I've sharpened with a file and then got onto a strop and whatever. I use Outback broadheads, which are an Aussie-made broadhead. I don't think Luke's making them at the moment because he's moved. But I've read the Ed Ashby stuff. I listened to that Meat Eater podcast. I listened to a lot of other podcasts, and there's stacks of thought out there, and everybody's got their own experiences and what they like. So I wouldn't say what I have found works the best as much as I would say this is just what I've killed stuff with. But I find this, like, I've tried to sharpen double bevel broadheads before, and obviously people are really good at it. I just find a single bevel really easy. I like the stuff that Ed Ashby has said about how a single bevel will spin when it hits a target and there's more chance of splitting bone and whatever. But my experience only goes as far as my broadheads have always been super, super sharp. So when I've put the broadhead in the right place, I haven't had anything close to an issue with getting done what I need to get done. I think maybe with my compound, I put an arrow through a pig that I never found, but as soon as it came out of the bow, I knew it was a terrible shot. And I've used those Outback single bevels with both my compound bows and with my trad bows, and they've worked really well. Only difference being most of the trad bow stuff, I've used a 200 grain head as opposed to the 130 grain heads, because I'm usually trying to push the weight up with my trad bows a little bit more. But I want to try some 3 blades at some point, and maybe for the rut as well, when the deer are pretty tense and there's a chance that they might jump the string a little bit. I like the idea of maybe an extra cutting edge to try and get a bit more bleeding. But I can't really say too much about broadheads because I've only used one brand and one style, and there are obviously stacks out there on the market. One thing I personally wouldn't do would be use an expandable head with a trad bow. I think I've seen some people doing it, but typically speaking, you just want efficient cutting ratio, like a 3-to-1 or close to a 3-to-1, and as long as you can get it really sharp, that's the main thing, I suppose, and then putting it where you want to put it.
I think your limited information just tells people that what you use works. So there's probably not a lot of need to change it. And is it fair to say that the majority of your bow hunting has been on pigs? Has that been the main game of choice, or is it a bit more varied than that?
No, I've got killed several pigs with my compound, and then so far with the trad bows, I've taken 3 goats and 1 pig, and I hit a deer last rut with my trad bow, and the arrow broke off. I definitely hit him in the shoulder. It wasn't a good shot, but like no amount of a fancy broadhead or anything would have made a difference in that regard. It was just, it was really close, and I misjudged where I had to hold. And in that space too, goats aren't quite as hard as pigs. The pigs sort of have their skin's a lot thicker, and that's I know it's difficult to make comparisons between the rifle stuff and the archery stuff, but I really don't find fallow hard to kill. Like, I've shot a stack of them with small rifles. Like with 222s and 223s. Whereas the pigs shot with my compound died very easily, except the ones that I hit poorly, of course. Most of what I would put it all in is just making sure the broadhead's super sharp. I think for me, that's like I sort of rate myself in terms of getting them to pop the hairs off my arms and my legs. So, it's amazing how quickly stuff will die. And with the trad bow as well, like, I'm getting pass-throughs with both the trad bow and the compound bow, so I can't really notice a difference in terms of the penetration in that regard. But I'd say I've got a pass-through on nearly everything except for one pig where I hit him sort of up the ribs and the arrow lodged itself in his offside shoulder, so I was never going to get a pass-through even with the compound in that regard anyway. So, it's all interesting to observe, and collect data and think about what you could do better or do differently.
You'll be still kicking yourself about that deer if you're still trying to get one on the ground. It's they're a challenge.
Yeah, mate. Like I mentioned previously, it was around the time I got the recurve bow, I wasn't going to hunt with it, and I was going to hunt with my compound until I blew it up. So it was also in the time that my wife bought her first rifle, and I spent 2 weeks hunting basically, and between my wife and I think we got might have been $5 on the ground in that couple of weeks. And we could have shot way more. Like this, the drought had just had them all concentrated around the last areas of feed and water. And I'm sort of sitting here, I've been absolutely spoiled with some of the access I've got in terms of the fallow deer. There's just rut activity all over the place. There's just absolute cacophony of noise and action. And then the following year, when I took the trad bow out, we got all this rain a couple of months before, and I barely heard a croak. I barely saw anything at all. I spent most of my time just walking around, just hoping to hear something. So I was spending a lot of time rattling in the bushes and in good spots of cover, but most of the time I hadn't heard or seen a deer before I was rattling, so I was all completely blind. So I had a couple come in and I just wasn't ready for them. I got really close to some, and I thought, rightio, next year it'll be better. And same kind of thing. It wasn't much action. And the one buck I did get to come in, I could see him. There was 2 of them, and they were both probably about 2.5 years old, like maybe just a year after a spiker. And I just watched him from probably 200 meters away, rattle, and he's just come straight in. And I was behind a log, like everything was perfect, and he just came in so close and so fast. It might have been 3 meters away at the most. But it was to the point where if I didn't get him to stop, it would have been really difficult. So I let out a noise and he stopped, and he was just kind of quartering on, and it was so dark I couldn't even see my arrow in my peripheral vision. So I've just let it go. So it felt pretty good, and he hopped off, and spent a bit of time looking for him in the grass. I couldn't find him. I couldn't find any blood, but that could also be because I'm also like Ian, that I'm colourblind as well. So, and I was there another couple of days later, and I found my arrow in the grass, and I was stoked. I was like, oh yes, I missed him, and I picked it up, and it had snapped off at the front of it. So that also tells me that it probably was it wouldn't have gone through into his engine room at all, because if it had, it would have gone straight through, because I was using the heavy limbs for that deer. So I think I just hit him in the point of the shoulder, and he's probably okay. But I replayed it in my mind, as we all do when you make bad shots. But it was at least good for me to know that, or at least put the story together, that I'd made a hit in a particular area as opposed to, hit him through the guts, and I I knew he was probably dead somewhere, but might have been kilometres away. I don't know. But I know people like to be critical of bow hunters in that regard because there's a small margin for success in some ways, but I've certainly made more bad shots with rifles than I have with my bows because I've shot a lot more critters with my rifles. So these things happen and you just got to try and learn from it, move on.
Oh, most definitely. I mean, yeah, if you haven't made a bad shot, then you haven't been shooting enough, to be honest, Yeah. I've been starting to, film myself hunting, and the last outing was the first time I managed to get the camera set up on a deer that I was going to shoot, and all I filmed was a really good miss. That was it. It's the first time I got all work.
It happens too.
That's right. I got everything set up, the camera, everything was right, missed the deer. So that's what happened. So and that's with a rifle with a scope. So shooting basically a pointy stick off some other sticks, and expecting it to be like an exocet missile, you've probably set your expectations a little bit high. I'm still really interested in this idea of tuning. I've got to investigate that because I'm the first to admit I haven't really tuned this thing. So tuning the arrow and as I said, shooting a recurve off the shelf. I probably got a bit more of a draw length than you, but yeah, that idea of tuning it and playing around with weights. Like Ian, I'm using what thread am I using? I'm using one that came with the arrow. I've got a broadhead that that I've sacrificed for practice. So it's not sharp anymore, but it's the same kind of broadhead. It's a single bevel, just a flat broadhead, and I use that as the practice one, and the good ones are sharpened and sit in the case. But certainly thinking about weight and what that means, it's given me something to think about. I'm going to have to investigate tuning those arrows a bit better because I'm basically shooting them as I got them.
As I did with my compound.
Yeah, it's a long old ago.
Yeah, I picked my compound up. The shop set me up just like Dylan said. I went away, I could hit the target, and I was comfortable, and I've knocked some animals over, and that's fine. But I've never really understood the mechanics or the tuning of it. This I thought I needed to do a little bit better, and I just happened to be lucky to have this fella in our club that has a lot of experience in this, and I think used to have a shop. I used to set people up and had every different type of everything you could possibly want to just try out and figure out. So lucky to have him around us to do that. But yeah, Mark, you'll have to come up to the bow tuning day that we set up, and we'll talk about it a bit more. But yeah, well worth it, I think.
Most definitely. Most definitely. I have to tune that up because I do want to hunt with it eventually. So being the fact that, in fact, I've probably got better opportunities to hunt with a bow now than I've ever had in my life because I've got somewhere pretty close to home. So if it's not successful, I can deal with it. There's nothing worse going away for 8-hour drive and not and limiting your success. The fact that I've got an hour and a half and I can get on that deer. I do want to, and I would like to take a red deer with a bow. I most definitely would like to take a red deer with a bow.
That'd be cool.
That's kind of what I want to work towards. But I'm almost kind of thinking, do I want to do it with the longbow or do I want to do it with the recurve? So I'm kind of still mucking around with that.
I got to the point where I don't think I'd be fussy there. Getting onto deer and then managing to get yourself into that position until you've got some years of experience behind you is a multi-year task. You've got to be ready for the disappointment. All of those things that go with it. It's a skill, and it's funny. We talked to Andrew Day. He was a psychologist that was on the podcast a little while ago. You might find that interesting, Dylan. But he also had a couple of things that he put out on YouTube about just about men's mental health and how the bow was his tool of choice to help people. Dealing with that and like you were saying, Mark, getting a quiet mind and all of those sorts of things will, certainly, I think being able to deal with the frustrations of bow hunting in your mind and going back again and back again and back again and dealing with it and training yourself, and then I think coming up with the success at the end of all of that would be amazing. And I've done it with goats. Not that that is anywhere near the challenge that a deer is, because they're just stupid. Pigs I haven't even tried, even though bows and pigs go together, like we spoke about before. So I'm going to have to give that a crack, just because I've picked the bow up and that should just be done. I'd be interested in doing that. But deer I would absolutely love to take with a bow. But the realism in me says I've got a lot of work to do.
Yeah, look, I took a red deer at about 40 yards this year. In fact, I got too close. The angle was all wrong, and in the end, I spent all my energy sneaking up, trying to, impress myself about how close I could get. And the trouble is, when I got that within that, because I was there on a hill, I got to the point where I go, I can't see him now because the angle's all wrong. So I literally had to stand up and expose myself to get the shot off. But so I mean, I do like trying to get close, but I suppose with the luxury of a 308 in your hand, if I don't get too close, I've got something to do. But 30 yards with the pointy stick, I think is about probably my limit too. So
it's a long way with a recurve, man, or longbow. But and I hear you too, fellas. Like,
well, I reckon like if I had to press the reset button and live my life again, I'd probably still find myself into the archery. Certainly the last 6 months, 12 months maybe, I've just gotten so into the archery as a discipline as well as the bow hunting thing. Like, I've always considered myself more of a hunter than even a marksman with a rifle. I just, shooting a bow and owning bows for the aesthetic purposes or whatever, like, I just enjoy the whole thing so much. And I can also say that I've had plenty of experiences since I've picked the bow up where I've been within 20, 30 meters of some awesome critters, and I haven't been able to make the shots, so I haven't been able to kill them, but I would say I probably had more fun getting that close to them and screwing the stalk up than I would have had if I had my rifle and blasted them from 200 meters away. I would have certainly enjoyed it more again if I had got them, but I've, even when I was hunting a lot more with my rifles, like, I've got a 30-30 with open sights, and I love getting inside 50 yards with that thing. I just like getting really close. I just like hanging out with animals, and again, I'm blessed with my opportunities. Like, I used to hunt a lot with my brothers. They don't come away with me as much anymore because they're busy young men, as lots of people get busy. And I was telling one of them, you should get yourself a bow, mate. Just muck around and come up here. And he's just like, dude, like, I live in Sydney. I come hunting maybe once a year. When I go hunting, something's got to hit the ground. Like, I want to take something home, and I get that. Like, you're not always successful, but I get that. Whereas, again, I live in a rural area. I've got several places I can go hunting, public land and private land, and I'm not the only person, actually, and this is true, the only person who is upset when I come home empty-handed with the bow is my wife, because she's like, freezer's getting low, you're mucking around with this bow, and we need to fill this freezer up. So then the last time we went hunting, I got her to bring her rifle and I had my longbow. So I was like, if we see some pigs in the long grass, it's all me. We see anything else, you deck it. So that's what we did. And got a bit more meat as a result, which is good.
How awesome, though, to have a partner that is hunting with you. That's pretty rare these days, I think. I'd love it if my wife took up. I say that now. I'm fortunate my wife has her own hobby in equestrian. So if she's not out with the horses camping somewhere competing, then I'm out with the rifles or the bows, hunting. So, she's away as often as I am. So there's a fair trade-off there. Now, I'd like to say that she should get into hunting and we could go out and do this together. I think that would be magic. But sometimes it's good to have your own thing as well, right? But yeah, certainly if you're able to go on a family trip like that and have the backstop, being your wife with a rifle behind you, that's something special.
Oh yeah, mate, and like I've been very. I mean, I'm super lucky. I know I'm super lucky. Like my wife's the best, but I met her right around the time I was really starting to develop the ideas about the way I wanted to live my life in terms of, just a block of land, grow your veggies, live fairly sustainably, or, the idea of living a wilder life, for lack of a better term. I made that term up with my dad, but so I'd still be hunting as much as I am right now if I hadn't met her, but the fact that we've met and got married and got a house on a small block of land, and she takes care of most of the garden stuff and grows all the veggies and whatever else. Like I do really like my time in the bush. And then if we're at bush together and we're hunting, once I get past the frustrations of watching her, saw on the bones with the knife that I spend hours sharpening, it's just it's great. It's really good. She's gonna love hearing this too. So.
We should have brought her along. So, and I may have got this wrong. You termed a wilder life. That's also the name of your YouTube channel. Is that correct?
Yeah,
pretty much. Yeah, the wilder lifer, or yeah.
Trying to remember what you said it was as we were talking. But I hadn't. Oh yeah, I have meant to find it. I'll have to take a closer look at that. So how did you get into to the YouTube side? Because if it's not hard enough to take critters out with the bow, you're walking around with a camera now too.
Mate, look, I probably got into the photography before I even really got into the hunting.
You said that before. You went on family photography trips.
Yeah.
Well, my dad's just a gun photographer. He's my photography mentor. He's just amazing, and he's a bushman. He used to be a hunter. He's not anymore, but not because he doesn't like it. He just couldn't be bothered. He's happy with his cameras, so he hunts regularly when he's hanging out with me. And I've just been interested in the bush. I've been interested in all the animals. It's just part of who I am. And I was on a hunting trip with Dad, and Marcus, the editor of the Marcus, the editor of Australian Sporting Shooter, hit me up on Facebook. I had a bit of a rapport with him. I might have submitted an article or two previously, and he said that a columnist had sort of resigned, and he needed somebody else to write a column for him. So I said, yeah, let me think about it. Went down the pub with Dad and a friend of mine. We were up in Weipa hunting at the time, and Dad said, I think you should do it. It'd be good fun. You get to flex your literacy muscles a little bit and get a little bit of money for doing the things you love. So Dad and I had this conversation not long afterwards, of around the same time, where we weren't so much trying to come up with the idea of a brand, because I don't have merchandise. I'm not really looking to get a great deal out of it, but we were just talking about, I guess, the concept, like what is it that I'm really trying to do? Because I suppose at the end of the day, I'm trying to either just share what I do in case people are interested, or go towards educating people if they're interested enough to maybe want to participate in a similar kind of way. So I said something like, I'm just trying to live a life that's a little bit more wild than other people live. So whether it be, like I said, growing vegetables, or forward driving, camping, whatever, if it's out in the bush, or it's anything to do with rural Australia, raising animals or hunting animals, then that's what I want to be a part of. So we just said, it's like you want to live a wilder life than other people. So that's where we came up with the idea. I didn't really think it would go anywhere. It sort of hasn't really, but it's just given me, I suppose, a space to occupy on Instagram and YouTube that I feel like any of the photos that I take, I can share it. And then it's branched out a bit more into the video with, I've just always liked to take videos. Honestly, like I would be, people think I'm crazy when I say this, but I mean it genuinely. If I had a handful of really close mates and we were all, public land sambar hunting in Victoria, or we were all chasing pigs in South Central Queensland, which we've done before, I am just as happy, or potentially more happy, to not even have a rifle with me and just have a camera and take photos and take videos. I love it. It's sort of a little bit of a nod to the artistic person that I like to consider myself. We spoke before about playing music and writing music. I like to do this stuff. I like to take photos and share them with people, and I find myself conflicted when I'm by myself because I have a hard time deciding whether I want to hunt or whether I want to take photos or videos. So the couple of videos I have, certainly a couple of videos I have where I'm self-filming myself hunting with a recurve bow, is just a significant amount of mental energy when I'm out hunting to do that stuff. Whereas if somebody else is the subject, like my wife or some friends of mine or whatever, and I just have to worry about my camera, then I'm almost happier because it's an easier job, and I can just worry about that one thing. So it's just another way I enjoy being in the bush and enjoy sharing what I do with people if they happen to be interested.
Yeah, I think one assists the other anyway. The more you carry your bow and you get out there and you get amongst it, the better your photography is going to be for it anyway, because you're going to get yourself more experience and getting in close, and vice versa. I think it's great. I mean, it's such a difficult thing to be able to do both. And hats off to everyone that does that. I think it's really great. I also think that for a lot of us, I think there's a natural progression. Once you've been a hunter for a reasonable period of time, and you've had some success, either with the rifle or with the bow, the success changes in what it is that you do. And for me, it's about just regrounding and getting out, with a few friends or by myself. It doesn't really matter. And just going and spending some time in nature and seeing the animals that I want to see. And the success is finding those animals and getting up and seeing them. So I've also progressed to a point where, no, I haven't taken thousands of animals, and nor do I need to. I fill the freezer, and from time to time I go on a trophy trip because that's what I want to do, and we've had some reasonable success with that as well. But if I can be behind somebody with a camera, I'd love to do that. That's good fun. I like documenting other people's hunt trips because it's great for them. I've also mentored a lot of people through the branch, so we run a lot of mentor hunts where I have taken people on their very first deer hunt, and they've taken their very first deer, and I've been lucky enough to be able to video all of that for them as they hunt. So I guide them and help them, but at the end of it, I'm able to present them with this 15-minute YouTube clip that they can go and share with their family, and and have that piece of photography that they'll remember forever. And I have a good time putting it together. So I understand what you're saying. It's great.
Sure.
Well, it's that kind of. I think what happens, it's silly to kind of talk for everyone, but I know for me, it's this idea of storytelling. So the funny thing about hunting by yourself, and there's been lots written about hunting by yourself. From an ethical point of view, true ethics is what you do when no one's watching. But that idea of that you're actually by yourself and you experience something, and then when you talk to someone about it, it's you immediately know that they're not getting what you experience, because it's such a visceral thing. It is red of tooth and claw. That's what it is. That's what you're doing. You're doing something that's right there at the very bones of existence. And then you're trying to explain that to someone, and and you're just going, I know this is not. I know I'm not able to fully communicate this, and so that idea of somehow storytelling through video or photography, I think is really. You come to that point where you think that's the best way to share this. And I was looking at one of your videos, one of your most recent ones, where it's basically you just going on a trip, Dylan, and it's just a trip, but you can see that And, you look at the comments and people are just going, that's just fantastic. Now, if you kind of pull that apart, if you took that to an advertising agency and they went, well, mate, this didn't happen, this didn't happen, this didn't happen, this didn't happen, but you kind of go, yeah, no, isn't that wonderful? Isn't it wonderful that it didn't go like that? Wasn't it wonderful that the fact that you just went out there and you just explored and you took the world as it presented itself to you, rather than this kind of choreographed type of event where here's me driving, here's me loading, here's me hunting, here's me killing, here's me butchering, here's me back at home again, and here's all the products. It's just this journey of I've just gone out, and what I really liked about your video was there's actually not much audio in it. It's you kind of just watching, and I thought that was quite powerful in a way, because I thought that there's not this kind of necessity of a voiceover to explain everything. It's just this is just watch what's going to happen, and you look at the comments and you see that resonates really well. I think that storytelling is a big part of that desire. I know for me anyway, the desire to video and get video right is I actually want to try and communicate the story.
Yeah, well, I feel the same way, mate, and I appreciate your comments hugely, actually, because like the laptop that I'm on right now is about to die, and I just sunk a heap of money into this video editing computer because editing the videos, I wasn't motivated to keep making videos because it was taking forever because my computer was just so hopeless.
You're my younger self. Seriously. I was using a shitty old laptop that I managed to pilfer from work. And I was using freebie Lightworks to do my video editing because I didn't want to pay for anything. It died. And I went and had a custom built machine made. And it's incredible. What took 3 hours of rendering takes seconds. And I've trained myself to use the Adobe suite to put my stuff together, and it's been great. It's a great learning curve, but everything you're saying, I've sort of gone through it. Just a little heady.
Well, I was talking with my dad. He recently upgraded his machine too, and his laptop was older than my one, and he's just getting so annoyed at this thing. And he's just a whiz on Photoshop and Lightroom and Premiere. He's just unbelievable. And he's like, look, just sink the money into a new computer. You won't know yourself. So I'm like, righto. And so that particular video that Mark's referring to, I got that footage in July. And it's just been sitting there because I didn't feel like touching it. And then I loaded my new computer up, and I must have put the whole thing together in less than an hour, and which is not long if you're out there and you don't know how long it might take. And again, that storytelling is just so. I agree, Mark. Like for me, I'd write a few reports on a forum, or I'd write a short story for a magazine, and I always wanted to have some pictures to go with it because the pictures tell part of the story, obviously. And I've always been the kind of person to take photos of just a bunch of other random stuff just because I like being in the bush. I remember I was literally in the middle of bombing up a mob of pigs with my mates at the Macquarie Marshes, and I happened to see this little falcon, so I've just walked off with my camera, and my mates are just, into them, and I didn't care. It was great. And then the video thing is the next level because if you've got a half decent microphone, you can pick up these sounds of the bush. And for as long as I can remember, I've just enjoyed being in the bush. And what Mark said too about hunting by yourself, like I love taking out newcomers. I love taking out anybody who appreciates the bush as much as I do. But there's always, and this isn't a criticism to anybody I take out at all, but there's always this underlying, I'm always wanting to do right by them. Like I've found it particularly the case when I've been out with mates. We've been chasing pigs with dogs, and it's just action. We're on bikes. The dogs have caught a couple of pigs. We've got those ones right. We're off again, and I'm just keeping up basically. Whereas when I only have to please myself, then I take the time and I'll get a photo of that bird, or I'll get some footage of that grass in the wind, or some dew or frost on whatever, and there's a real story in that, because there's just so much other stuff that is happening that I find interesting, or I certainly enjoy experiencing or being around. And it's not quite the same unless I'm by myself. And I think a lot of other people sort of connect with that when they watch a video like that, where there was no talking or anything. It was just the sounds and maybe some very quiet music, and nothing really happened at all. Would have loved to have shot something, but I shot a bush, I think, with my bow, and that was it.
Yeah, I did. There was one part where I was thinking, what can he see? What can he see?
Why can't I see that?
What's going on there?
I think you may have answered my next question, because you talked about being in a metal band and collaborating. I was curious what the backtrack was going to be, but I think you've sorted that one out for me. You're not overdubbing it with some sort of dirty thrash or anything like that, which is nice to hear.
Maybe in the future. Yeah.
There was another point you made before we got on the video, which I just wanted to touch on, was that one of the, and it was a point I totally agree with, is that there's a certain aesthetic to a traditional bow that you just want to like own it. You look at it and go, this thing is just something you want to, and again, that might not be for everyone, but for me, I just like that. I just kind of went, I just want to own that because the way it looks.
Yeah.
It's got this amazing, and I don't, when I go to, for me, there's a place called Apex Hunting, Apex Archery. That's where I go, and and they've got a wall of compound bows, and they are, they're wonders of science and technology, but they don't appeal to me at all. But then you come around a corner where it's basically there's a laminated stick that hasn't changed too much for a couple of thousand years, and you kind of go, this thing just looks right. It's one of those weird things where somewhere millennia ago they got it right, and they went, okay, well, we got it right now. We won't be playing around with this too much from now on. And so the aesthetics of I think so for me anyway, the trad bow is something worth looking at. And that idea when you were talking about the trad police, I sometimes wonder if the trad police are really not criticizing the bow, but they're criticizing the effects of the aesthetics. Like if you get a long bow and it has a more of a recurve style grip on it, or it's a recurve that's got a mechanical shelf on it or rest rather than off the shelf, and they're really more, I think they're just complaining about the breakup of the aesthetics rather than the componentry.
Yeah, no, I agree. And mate, look, so much of what I do in my life, it's about the aesthetic values. Like the animals that I'm the most obsessed with, like a peregrine falcon, for example. I just think there's nothing in the world that looks cooler than a peregrine falcon. And then in terms of my guitars, I've got a Fender Stratocaster and I've got a Gibson Les Paul. They just look classic. Even with the rifles as well as the trad bows now, like a Winchester Model 94, beautiful piece of equipment, or like my 222 is a Seiko 461. It's just one of the most classic rifles you can imagine. And right down to, my wife, it just drives her nuts because she's kind of a minimalist in terms of, I don't need that much. I just like to do my things in the garden. Whereas like that, I can never have enough knives, I just buy knives because they look cool. That's it. And they'll get them sharp enough. They'll all do the job. Some are better than others, sure. But man, there's just, you just look at these knives, and again, being into history like I am, I just love the idea that I might grab a hold of something that is in a way fairly similar or aesthetically similar to something that somebody may have held 1, 2, 10,000 years ago and done kind of the same thing. And I've been really getting into my audio books, and I've been listening to some novels that are set in around the time of the 100 Years' War between mainly England and France, and they're just built around this idea of the longbow. So you're listening to this story when you're driving, and the person in the book's talking about how these archers are just built of muscle from pulling these yew bows and the goose feathers on these arrows, and it just makes you feel good because it just captures your imagination. It's stuff that you've got because you think it's cool. It makes you happy. The same way, like I've also got synthetic stainless rifles in my safe that I take out when the weather's poor, or when I'm going a really long way and I need to rely on something. But it's not the best looking thing in there, and it's not the first one I would go to grab if I had to just pick one to go out for an afternoon. So yeah, I'm very much into the stuff that just makes me feel good and instills a pride of ownership, I guess is another way of looking at it. And yeah, like I've got lots of stuff in this room that I'm sitting at the moment, and I need to build a shed to fit it all in there, but that's okay. It's, future plans.
Yeah, look, I totally agree. I think sometimes I'm probably over obsessed with aesthetics. Like I'm sitting here playing with this little knife, and can we see it? It's a lovely little pocket knife, but what I've done is I've bought little aftermarket screws just to make it look a little bit better. I thought, no, that needs to be improved. There's something there. I'm not in a. So yeah, I totally agree about the aesthetics of it. That's very much. And in terms shed updates, I may have mentioned it. I certainly mentioned Ian. My wife, who's a real artist, she we were building her a studio shed in the backyard to do video and all sorts of things like that. Well, I've got the shed now. She wants to keep the garage. I'm going to the shed, so I am fitting out the shed with fishing rods and all sorts of, and all the stuff for the video production as well. So it's going to be a great little studio. So I'm moving that way myself.
Make sure you trench some underground Ethernet cable to that shed so that you're not relying on the house wireless for your podcast.
Well, that's it. We don't actually run. We were actually hardwired in this place. That was one of the things the guy did because we're running a business from here. So we are hardwired. So yeah, I have to figure that out because I will be doing video production from there. That's a big part of it. It was a studio. The idea was it was a studio. It's just that we're pivoting on who's going to be in the studio now. So I completely agree, and I have to admit I've only recently broken my habit of the collecting knives. I've had a kind of slow. I just literally went. I've just got too many. They're still in boxes, They're still.
Yeah, I understand. It's a habit we all have. I think. I'm the same. I have my favorite knife, and then I got gifted a beautiful. I think it was a Bark River knife for all the boys in the club gave it to me for my 40th, and it's the only knife I've ever used since. I still like my other one, and I had this other knife that was a wedding present that my dad was given by my uncle. My father passed away years ago. I've always kept this bush basher, horrible thing that would never use for anything. But for some reason I kept it because it was a gift to him on his wedding day, and I had somebody break that down and turned into a hunting knife with his initials, my initials, my son's initials, and it'll never get used until we take our first animal together as a father and son pair, and then we'll use that knife on that day. Is the plan. But I also have, that's a nice knife. I'll buy that, and it's over there in the box, and it's never been used. And I don't know why we do these things, but we do.
We do, and I'm sure that the industry in Australia is very happy that we do.
Yeah, that's right.
Yep,
that's right.
That's right. I'm just supporting the economy. That's all I'm doing.
Yeah, a few things in the pipeline, but I think a lot of the people who are involved in them are talking about them in particular spaces already. Like there's a TV show that my wife and I are going to get filmed for in early February, and that's nearly completed, and I think it's going to be out on a major network, and that's why I might be meeting I mean, this Chloe from Ridgeline doesn't know me from a bar of soap, but OSA is like a major sponsor of the show. So
I haven't even heard of it.
Yeah.
Oh, really? Okay. Well, I'll start out like I haven't been mumbling about it.
Yeah. Talk to me about this thing that seems really cool. I haven't heard about it, but I don't. Is it on free to wear? Is it, what sort of channel is it on, and why wouldn't I have heard about it? I mean, I don't watch a lot of commercial TV, so it's probably just bypassed me.
No, I watch zero commercial TV. I think it's a TV show that's going to be on free to wear, I believe. The bloke who is organising it all, his name's Craig Pringle. It's called The Season, and he is a videographer or a TV cameraman or whatever by trade. He's also a passionate outdoorsman, and I kind of got connected with him through a couple of mutual friends in the forward drive camping industry that he'd worked with beforehand. So I might have been talking with him 18 months ago about, he's just putting together a TV show. He's just looking for people who would be good representatives of hunting in Australia because he wanted to change the dialogue of, or change the perception of Australian hunters. And it's certainly what I've seen so far. There's a bit on Instagram under The Season. It just looks schmick. And this is me just saying what I think about it. It's not necessarily words that Craig has said, but it's something that I believe is going to elevate Australian hunting into the kind of same kind of vibe as things like Meat Eater or these really big things in that it's basically just following around everyday people who live this kind of lifestyle. So some of the people who are involved are big time bow hunters and big time cooks and the spin for my wife and I is that we live on a small property. We raise some domestic animals. We grow a lot of our own vegetables. We spend time removing pests for farmers because we have that obligation, but we also spend a lot of time just hunting purely for ourselves. So what the filming and all that looks like, I don't really know yet, but in another couple of months, the crew will be here and we'll be having a good time. And I'm certainly I'm a little bit nervous about how much it might blow up because I don't really know what I might do with that. But my motivation for having a yarn with Craig was more just like, look, it's very much a case of leading by example. And I'm by no means a perfect hunter, but I spend a lot of time educating kids professionally. I spend a lot of time educating other adults, like friends of mine who are interested in hunting and they want to know more. And to me, it's just a case of, well, look, you put your money where your mouth is almost. There's an opportunity there to present hunting in Australia to a lot of people who aren't going to be very familiar with it. So it's a really good opportunity for us to get some good publicity and try and change the way the public might feel about us. And I listened to a couple of these podcasts beforehand, and I know Ned mentioned a lot of similar things about the way the public's looking at pig doggers and all that stuff. So it's a huge opportunity, really, and the fact that a major network's going to have it on is just it's a huge deal. So I'm really looking forward to being involved with the project and trying to play a small part in what could be a really big positive shift in attitudes towards hunters in Australia. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, it looks very interesting. They do say that it's on the major network, so I'm not sure exactly what that means. I'd like to get some better understanding of that. Because Beyond the Divide's been going for a number of years now, and that was on what was free to air for a period of time, or through what we used to call Bris 31 up here in Brisbane. But then it moved to different platforms. So yeah, I'm certainly interested in seeing what it is, and I'm of the certainly of the what I call the abundance mentality. The the more that there is positive conversation, positive imagery out there, the better we all, the better we all, the more we all benefit. It's, it's the food court model.
Yeah.
You want to have something for everyone, and that's how you don't want to be a specialist and be the only show and tell. You want everyone having their bit, everyone being involved, everyone seeing a different view of the thing, and someone kind of go, well, the guy who hunts deer all season doesn't appeal to me, but the guy who lives off grid with his wife, that really, really appeals to me. And and I think that's the joy of what we do. It's in it, I suppose, again, if we want to have the metaphor for the bow, there's a thing called a trad bow, but boy, that's a broad brush to apply to a piece of wood, and I think hunting's the same thing. What is hunting is an incredibly diverse and interesting topic to discuss, because we all do it from a different point of view or a different experience, or we have slightly different what's our motivation, be it pest control, be it food for the table, be it for a lot of people just the feeling that you're actually doing something and you're actually part of nature, rather than being a tourist and just kind of driving around and looking at beautiful views and then heading back to the local coffee shop. So I'm really keen to see how it's received more broadly by the Australian public, because it sounds like a very, very admirable project.
I'm excited.
Mm.
I've just found it on Instagram as we're talking, and I've learnt about this show that I crave to find on TV, and now I'm going to know one of the stars. Like,
that's right.
You heard it here first, people.
That's right. That's it.
Dylan's going to be there.
Yeah,
So
that's right. And
that's awesome. I think that's fantastic.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's it. I think that's it. If and only by what you've discussed, but if there's a story about two people who basically live, and let's use your term, a wilder life, but growing your own food, or or at least supplementing your food by wild harvest, as well as animal husbandry, those kind of things, man, that's what people crave. And I think COVID has certainly instilled that. We actually want to do something where we're not so dependent on Woolies or Coles. God, who wants to fight over toilet paper? So that's not life. That's not life. That's not living. Living is trying to do something a bit different, to march into the beat of your own drum. So yeah, I'm very excited by it, and what I've seen by it, it looks pretty good.
Yeah, definitely. Looks cool.
Mate, it's very, very keen to see I can point to the girl. Look, I know him.
Yeah, well,
He's that guitar playing science teacher. so guitar playing history teacher who hunts with the bow.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
Yeah. Oh man, look, I'm lucky to have been connected with lots of interesting people in the last 10, 11-ish years that I've been doing this. Just as I'm talking to the right people, or connecting with people through work or through my brother's work or something. So, like I said, it's a really big opportunity, more for Australian hunters as opposed to me or Kira personally. So I'm just hoping that we can do a good job and have the vast majority of people watch the show and feel that every one of us who's going to be on the show is representing things in a positive light, and hopefully move forward and help greater society understand what it is we do.
Look, Ned Macon, we mentioned him a couple of times, said it once, there's people who hunt and there's the people who hate hunting, and they're already fixed. If we want to influence, we've got to influence the people right in the middle who kind of, I'm not sure. You don't talking to hunters is great, because you always agree on anything, or if you don't agree, at least you're all coming from the same point. Talking to anti-hunters is just expending energy. because it's a moral decision on their part, and that's all it is. It's those people in the middle who maybe or maybe not, or don't even know, or don't even think about it. And I must admit, for me, the amount of people who, when they find out that I hunt, kind of actually don't have a moral objection. They have more of a kind of lack of understanding. They kind of go, what is it that you do exactly? And what is that? And so, and they're pulling, bits and pieces of knowledge from, from TV shows and things like that, or they had an uncle once who was that, or something like that. And I think that's where the point of influence is, people like that. So, TV is a huge influencer.
I think if you can subtly, to start with, bring the subject into your peer groups, your work groups, and the people that you're around, you can positively influence them. Everyone at my work knows that I do this, and so many people at my work, from way upper level management to people in my team to others that hear about it, contact me and say, how do I get involved? Like they actually crave the adventure. They want to be in the middle of nowhere for a little while, away from the noise and the hustle and bustle of corporate life, and the whole subsistence style living, or just whatever you want to call it, surviving off the land for a week to get away from things, appeals to more people than we think. And I also think that a lot of us are potentially too scared to bring it up as a subject because they don't want to be attacked, which means that we keep it more secret than it should be. It doesn't get the air that it needs sometimes. But that's a difficulty.
That's fair enough too. And that one of the joys of turning 50 is you no longer care. So I'm
40, mate.
I no longer care. I just tell them. I tell them.
Yeah,
I like it. It's not my problem. How terrible. What are you doing? I'm going hunting. So that's it. See ya. So I think that's it. That's it. I mean, and that's a challenge for a lot of people bringing it up. I recently have a friend who's now just become the CEO of one of the Australian charities involved with men's health, and I'd worked with her before in a charitable context, and a few months ago, she's is actually when I was away on holiday with the family, she sent me a messenger via Facebook with a photo of me from Australian Hunter, and said, "This is you." And I said, that is me. And she said, and I went, "Oh, how'd you find that?" And she said, "Well, we've actually put an ad in the magazine about a rally for men's health." And she went, "Hey," so and this conversation started, and from that, it grew from there. So there is a lot of people. There's a lot of potential for positive positioning of hunting and the lifestyle. And people will be, I think often people are more susceptible to the idea that you're doing something of value. It's just figuring out a way to how to have that conversation to start with.
Yeah, being in a country area, Dylan, and in the school system, I don't think the subject would be too difficult to broach with kids. And maybe, and that is probably somewhere where it needs to be, but relocate yourself to a city school. That conversation could be a lot harder.
Yeah, look, it absolutely would be. Again, I've been very lucky I've been lucky that I've ended up in rural areas, but at the same time, one of the reasons why I wanted to be a school teacher, there's a stack of reasons why, obviously, but one of the reasons is because it's a really stable job that you can have in essentially any place where there's a school, of which there are plenty of them, obviously, in rural areas. So as soon as I made my mind up that this was something I was going to be doing in terms of the hunting stuff, I was like, well, I'm just going to move, and live out in the bush. So I spent the first 8 years of my career living at Gilgandra and got a lot of good access around Gill, and spent ages shooting foxes and pigs and whatever, and then I've since moved to the New England Tablelands, which is where I'm originally from. And look, it makes a difference in any workplace when you've got really supportive bosses and supportive community. And I even came to my new community and had kids at school recognise me from the stuff I put on the internet already. So within the first couple of weeks of coming to my new place of work, I had the conversation with my principal. I said, look, bud, I do this. There's no reason for you to be concerned. There's nothing that's going to get me in trouble or nothing that's inappropriate. Just say no. He's like, cool. I'm sure the kids love it. I'm like, yeah. So then that's then led to, like I said, this bush survival skills class. I've taken gutted deer carcasses into the hospitality room and skinned them with kids and taught them how to make jerky. I've taken in deer tongues and hearts and livers and cooked it with the kids and taught them about eating offal. I've literally walked past my principal's office when he's been having an enrollment interview with a new kid. And as I've walked past, he's like, oh, this is Dylan. You'd really like him. He's a hunter too. So I guess what I can add to this particular conversation in this space is something I am fascinated by is just how much middle ground there could be in the metropolitan areas that hunters or the extreme anti-hunters don't really realise is there. Like, I've hardly had any negative comments or attitudes whatsoever from staff, students, or community when I've brought this stuff up, and most of the people who do the same kind of thing, certainly if they're not even really hunters, they know somebody who hunts, or they know somebody who fishes, or they live on farms. It's city people probably don't quite understand just how normal all of it is out here, and it's a genuine part of life. And I've had conversations with younger teachers. I can say younger now because I've been teaching for more than 10 years. Younger teachers who have come out to a rural area, and then they've had these conversations with kids, like they, for lack of a better term, that they just don't understand. And they might ask these kids in their class, oh, so what did you get up to in the weekend? And the kids say, oh, we had to shoot a bunch of kangaroos. And they started to, well, you really shouldn't be shooting those kangaroos, and these kids are just looking at them like, what the hell's wrong with you? Like, we got these wheat crops and the kangaroos are eating them. Like, this is how we make our living. And I've had to have, I haven't lectured people. I've just said, look, if you want these kids to get on with you want these kids to have any ounce of respect for you, you can't just arrive here from the coast and after a day pick a fight with them over something you don't know anything about. So everything I try to promote in terms of any thought processes, whether it be hunting or talking to people in cities, is just be curious if you don't know what it's really about, as opposed to judge first up. Like, go out of your way to try and learn something as opposed to just hammer somebody when you don't really know what you're talking about, because there's an opportunity for, like we said, people in the middle ground to be influenced. And in my experience, I've always been able to influence them positively when they've identified me as somebody who might exist on a fairly extreme end of society, to use their language. And then they use me or my wife or the both of us together as sounding boards, like, oh, but when you do this, it's like, well, yeah, but we eat them. Or all the foxes we shoot in that area are actually protecting the endangered turtles that live in the river in that area. Like, there's a lot of nuance, and the more we communicate it positively, that's only going to work in our favour most of the time if we do a good job with our communication.
Yeah, look, you've hit the nail on your head. I think that the big thing here is that there's nuance in this, and if you're able to have the opportunity to explain that, you'll actually become an influence. And some people won't listen to you. That's fine. They won't listen to you. That's okay. They won't listen. That's it. But I think there is a lot of people who will listen, or at least kind of be inquisitive enough to kind of go, yeah, okay, I need to know more, or I'm interested. And I mean, I've found that. I mean, I you know, I grew up. I'm an inner city boy all my life. I grew up in the inner city. I just happen to be interested in other things. But and like my boys go to a local school, but it's a lovely little local school, and it's small. And you know, everyone at that school know. Well, not everyone, but most people who've come across one of my boys knows that I hunt, because you know my boys take skulls to school for show and tell. You know, so
Nice.
yeah, that's it. So my boy, you know, it's show and tell time. What do you want to do? Oh, I want to take, you know, a fossil, or I want to take a pig skull, or I want to take some hooks, or I want to take some antlers, or something like that. So, and you know, invariably go, well, where'd you get it from? Oh, my dad shot him. And you know, that's it. It just kind of comes on from that. And most people, well, I've never had any kind of negative feedback from that. And if it has been negative, they haven't had the you know, the nous to actually communicate it to me. So I've never had anything wrong with it. I did have a but never been anything negative about that. And some of the parents, you know, and the other thing is too is that whilst in the city there is a lot of people who have no experience of country life, or what you might call an outdoor life, there is a lot of people who do. You know, they just have their version of it, or they come from a rural setting, or they've come from a regional area, so they do bring some knowledge with them as well. So it's quite interesting that, you know, once you have that conversation, and to be honest, this reminds me of a podcast we just did with Chloe, was about if you can have that conversation, and you can have a conversation through a level of nuance, and not pushing an agenda, but actually explaining what you're doing and answering questions, you can have a great deal of influence on people.
Oh yeah, definitely.
We've run a good conversation. We're pulling into 2 hours now, so it's sort of where we sort of like to cap a few things off. I like to try and wrap up with a few of the takeaways that I've written down in my book over the course of the conversation. But there's so many of them. I'm really inspired by the way you do what you do, to be fair. You know, to be talking to children in a day job, looking at promoting what you're doing through a TV show that's going to come out shortly. And I know that wasn't necessarily on your list of things you were going to discuss, but it came out fairly naturally by surprise. And thank you for that, because I've now added that to my list of things I want to do in my spare time, if I can do that. But certainly just wanted to say thanks for spending a couple of hours with us. We try and get some really interesting people onto the podcast with different perspectives that can help the new guys come in and understand some of the little things that they might want to do to get the experience they need to be confident in their hunting. Around the trad bow and the bow, you've certainly given us an insight into that. And I think before we leave, and before I pass over to Mark, it'd be great if you could just let us know where your socials are. We've talked about your YouTube channel, but where do people find you on YouTube, Insta, Facebook, etc., so that we can drop that in the comments so that people can find you. And other than so if you could pass on those details first, that would be great.
Sure, mate. Yeah, so if you go to YouTube and just type in The Wilder Lifer, 2 words, or go to Instagram and just type in Wilder Life, you'll probably have something come up. And I do ride for Australian Sporting Shooter, and my column is called the Wilder Life column. So I think I've been doing that for over 4 years now. So that's something like over 22,000-ish words published. My math is probably horrible on that. But yeah, so that's where you can find anything that I'm putting out there, YouTube or Instagram or in the magazine.
Awesome, mate. Thank you for that. We'll make sure that we pass the details on, and if people want to get in contact, they can, or subscribe to your channels and give you some support. That'd be awesome as well.
Cheers.
Mark?
Yeah, look, I'd just like to say thanks for accepting the invitation. I know that when we first spoke, you said, "Oh, I'm not sure what we've got to speak about," and I thought, yeah, there's enough there. We got something. And look, I think it was really pertinent that you said, you know, like, I'm not an expert, and I actually think that's actually a great way to start any conversation. Look, I'm not an expert, but I'm someone who's tried and experimented and learnt and willing to share it on, and that's what you've done tonight, I think, which is great. I myself, probably need to give a little more attention to my bow than I have, and I'm sure there's a lot of people listening who've seen what you've done and thought, well, he's pursued a lifestyle that he wanted to pursue, and I think that's a great learning for so many people. Have a crack at something. If you think about what it is and pursue it, and be it hunting or be it photography or whatever it is, or bringing all those things together. So, mate, again, appreciate you taking the time, and good luck to your forthcoming television career.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me on. I really enjoyed it. I've always enjoyed talking with people about this kind of stuff, and I'm stoked that you thought I might be someone half interesting. So that's cool. Thank you.
Awesome, mate. We'll keep in touch, and good luck with everything.
Well, see you again, mate.